Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Safe Harbor, a Logan McKenna Mystery Book 5 from the Logan McKenna series by Valerie Davisson, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue, August 15th, 2018. Man found dead on fishing boat by Samantha Badger, Newport, Oregon. The body of a 45-year-old man was discovered on the deck of a charter fishing boat early Tuesday morning in Depot Bay Harbor by local man Eric Udall of Newport, Oregon. Employed as a deckhand on the boat for the last 2 seasons, Udall spotted the body when he arrived to work this morning. "I still can't believe it," Udall said. "I've never seen anything like that." Police are not relieved seeing the victim's name pending notification of relatives. The area has been cordoned off until the investigation is complete. Chapter 1. Saturday, July 28th, 2018. Logan put her phone on speaker, squeezed her eyes shut a few times, and refocused on the calendar in front of her. This trip was turning out to be a major pain in the butt. "What about the first?" Logan asked. "That's a Wednesday, should have cheaper fares." "Let me see," said Amy. "Mine looks good. Let me take a look at Liam's." Logan waited while her daughter finished checking her husband's work schedule. She'd been trying since the beginning of summer to find 2 weeks that worked for everyone. Rita Wolf, the director of the new school she worked with up in Oregon, told her about a friend's house that was available for rent. The Wagners were summering in Spain. The house would be empty until September. Must be nice. Rita had offered her own home again, where Logan stayed last time, but it was too small for the whole gang. Besides, Rita's house held some scary memories. 2 years ago, Logan's idyllic mini-vacation there had been interrupted by a murderous and uninvited guest. That experience hadn't turned her off to Rita's neighborhood, though. A jewel on the Oregon coast, Little Whale Cove, LWC, a community of about 200 homes, was tucked into an old-growth cedar forest halfway between Lincoln City and Newport, Oregon, just off Highway 101. It boasted miles of paths and a 5-minute walk to a spectacular rocky bluff overlooking the ocean. Breathtaking views, including migrating whales who passed by each autumn on the way to Baja, then back up again in the spring, hugging the coast on their way to nutrient-rich waters in the north. A whale-watching excursion was definitely on their to-do list. The whole gang whose schedule she was attempting to coordinate for this trip consisted of Amy, Liam, herself, Ben, and Benjamin Liam Buchanan, a mouthful of a name for a 15-month-old toddler. With all good intentions, he'd been named after his father and Logan's significant other, Ben Halvard, her landscape architect neighbor. Ben had become part of the family even recently, walking Amy down the aisle. But no matter which name they tried to use, it became unwieldy to call him Little Ben or Little Liam, and Liam was dead set against calling him Junior. Their neighbor's little girl Shannon came to the rescue inadvertently. When she tried to say Liam, it came out Ian, so Ian it was. Simple solution, and they all loved his name. His elementary school teachers would just have to figure it out. She watched Ben and Ian through her studio window, 2 towheads bent intently over some flowers. People always assumed Ben was the little boy's biological grandfather. He got such a kick out of it. Logan never corrected them. She loved seeing them together. The two were inseparable. She and Ben often watched Ian on the weekends so Liam and Amy could fit in a date night or on days when they both had to work. During the week, Amy ran the school education and field trip programs at the Sea Otter Center just north of town, and Liam, a botanist, recently took over the kelp management and restoration program that stretched from La Jolla to Huntington Beach. Although technically employed by the Scripps Aquarium an hour and a half south of Jasper, California, his current projects were all local. He only had to drive south for bi-monthly meetings. "Yep, I think it's clear," Amy said. "I don't see any conferences or trips that week. I'll double-check when he gets home, but I think we're good." Logan wished she could tell her right now. She had the flights pulled up on her computer and wanted to click buy tickets and get it over with, but she agreed Amy had better check with Liam to make sure. It would be more of a pain to have to reschedule than wait a few hours and do it right the first time. Ending the call, she laid her cell phone on her desk and stood up to stretch. Nothing that couldn't wait till Monday. Between writing grants and handling the paperwork to keep everything running smoothly, there was always work she could do, but Logan had gotten better at balancing her work and personal life, usually keeping weekends free. She glanced at her phone and then back out at the 2 men in her life. Too nice a day to be inside. Logan flipped her laptop shut, tucked it under her arm, and trotted down the stairs. She made the 50-foot commute across the gravel driveway to her front door in under 3 minutes. A few years ago, when she was first developing the Fractals music math program for the school district, Ben had helped her convert her 1940s single-car garage into a 2-story workspace. The downstairs was turned into a recording studio, mostly used for student projects. A narrow set of stairs led to the addition he'd designed for her, stacked directly over the studio. An open, airy space, the top half of the west wall was all windows, allowing her a sweeping view of Maine Beach and the ocean. Lucky for her, her home perched on the side of Killer Hill, a street that rose from Pacific Coast Highway at a 45-degree angle, so she had an unobstructed view of the ocean from both her home's rooftop deck and her studio office windows. That wasn't the only reason she loved her at-home workspace. The other had to do with not having to work out of a claustrophobic cubbyhole at the school district offices, a twisting warren in more ways than one. The halls were lined with school politics, which she'd never been good at, even during the very short time she was a classroom teacher. Working from home helped her stay at least somewhat independent of all that. Dimebox, her 5-year-old tortoiseshell rescue cat, languidly stood up and stretched at her approach. In from his nightly rounds, he'd been dozing on the slate stepping stones leading up to the front door. He wound around her ankles now, purring loudly. "Time for lunch," Logan said. 20 minutes later, after feeding Dimebox, Logan assembled some sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly for her grandson, tuna for her and Ben, lots of dill relish and chopped celery. Ben, the consummate cook, had taught her a few culinary tricks. Tuna salad sandwiches really did taste better with some crunchy stuff in there. She even toasted the bread. Occasionally she got wild and threw in some caraway seeds. Reaching into the small domed refrigerator that came with her Hobbit Hole beach cottage, Logan retrieved a pitcher of freshly squeezed lemonade and some leftovers from last night's barbecue. Her best friend Bonnie had a Myers lemon tree in her backyard way overproduced, so she was blessed with fresh citrus all year long. Bonnie and her husband Mike had taken Logan in after the car accident that left her a widow 7 years ago. Her recovery included dealing with the later discovery that Jack had been unfaithful during their marriage. She'd never told Amy and, for the most part, had let that go. For the most part. Maybe that's why she and Ben hadn't moved forward any further than being in a relationship. She didn't know if she could ever trust someone enough to marry again. Logan added a scoop of Ben's red potato salad and some black olives onto each plate, tucked in some paper towels and spoons, put everything on a tray, and headed outside. "Come and get it!" Chapter 2, Saturday, July 28th. Ben had a full outdoor kitchen and dining area in his yard, but they decided to rough it today and settled around the small round cafe table in Logan's. Ben brought Ian's booster seat from inside and strapped him in while Logan filled his sippy cup with lemonade. He soon had peanut butter smeared on every reachable surface. She was just popping some black olives on Ian's fat little fingers, then eating them off one by one, which always made him laugh, when she heard a doorbell ring faintly from inside the house. Passing olive nibbling duty over to Ben, Logan pushed her chair back and went inside. Wiping her hands on a dish towel she grabbed on the way through the kitchen, she opened the front door and stopped dead in her tracks. There, on the doorstep, stood a woman. Fashionably dressed, older, crisp white blouse, calfskin belt, linen skirt, bare legs, and expensive-looking sensible heels. Businesslike, salon-styled hair, a shade lighter than Logan remembered. It complemented her olive skin, minimal makeup, skillfully applied. Louis Vuitton purse on her arm, she hesitantly held a set of car keys in her hand as if expecting to be turned away. Logan saw a white Lexus pulled up behind her car in the driveway. A single word involuntarily rose to Logan's mind and almost escaped out of her mouth. "Mom." Instead, she blurted out, "What are you doing here?" The woman glanced back at the cars. "I see you still have Lola," she said. Lola was Logan's sapphire blue 58 Corvette, a graduation gift from her father. Seeing the car always brought back a flood of memories, all good ones. Camping trips, science experiments, popcorn-fueled scary movie nights with her father, the parent who stayed. Her father had died several years ago, and she missed him every day. Walking Amy down the aisle, holding his great-grandson Ian. Logan dragged her mind back to the present. She was at a loss for words. She wasn't going to have a casual chit-chat with the woman who'd abandoned her family 30-some-odd years ago. She'd only been 13, and Rick was, 9 when she left? She'd have to do the math to figure out how old their father had been. Parents didn't come with numbers. Dad was always just Dad, and he'd been a great one before and after his wife up and left. No explanation, no nothing. Just gone one morning and when they woke up. Logan decided to stick with the tried and true. "Why are you even here?" she asked, keeping her voice even. "What do you want?" "I'm not sure exactly. I'd like to talk to you if you'll let me," her mother said. Her mother's face had more lines and she was thinner. Ben appeared at her shoulder, Ian on his hip. He sensed the tension and looked questioningly at Logan. Ian had no such qualms. After first burying his face in Ben's shoulder coyly, he whipped his head around and turned on the charm, blessing the woman standing before him with a huge smile and outstretched, somewhat sticky arms. Logan automatically reached up with the dish towel to wipe at the remaining peanut butter on his hands. In the case, he launched himself into his great-grandmother's arms. Great-grandmother. Wow. Several lifetimes had slipped by. "Hello," the woman said, reaching out a perfectly manicured hand to Ben, whose right hand was free. "I'm Sophia." Realizing he was in way over his head, he shook the proffered hand briefly and said, "Nice to meet you, I'm Ben." Apparently no one was going to tell him what was going on, so he shifted Ian to his other hip. "I'll just go get things cleaned up now," he said, returning swiftly to the safety of the kitchen, the toddler wailing his disappointment at not being allowed to greet the new visitor promptly. Logan waited until Ben was hopefully out of earshot. "I don't know that we have anything to talk about," she said quietly. "Why now? Why after all this time?" "Look, I'm sorry to spring this on you, just show up here unannounced, but I couldn't think of any other way. I figured if I called, you'd just hang up on me." "You got that right, Mom." "If it helps, I'm not expecting or even looking for forgiveness, but there are some things you should know." Sophie looked awkwardly around her as if she'd misplaced something. "I'm staying in a hotel nearby. They have a nice restaurant. I can meet you there. We can talk over dinner, my treat, or anywhere else you'd prefer. I saw a coffee shop at the end of the street there as I was turning in, Tava something with a lot of vowels. That's fine too. I don't know if they're open for dinner." Her voice trailed. She looked down at her shoes, waiting for Logan to speak. When she didn't, Sophia unclasped her purse, took a card out, and handed it to her. Not a business card, but a personal calling card, a throwback from some genteel era. Not a CPA anymore, then. "I'll be in town for a few days. I hope you'll call, and if this time isn't good, I don't live far. I have a flexible schedule. I can be here on short notice. We can do dinner, lunch, or whatever time works for you." She said, "I really just want to talk. If after you hear what I have to say you want nothing more to do with me, I'll go away. You won't hear from me again." "Like last time, Mom?"